being 1 minute late. So I'm going to do this because I think it'd be super fun. So if you guys have ideas on it, but I know a lot of people in our app community are obviously on peptides, and now YouTube lets me do a invite to a guest, and we could be on this together doing it. Now, it might be super annoying if I'm walking and having a guest, so maybe we'll set it up where I'm not walking, but I'm super excited about that opportunity because having someone else to talk to and generate questions and ideas and share is, I think, super fun. It's fun for me. Hopefully it's fun for you. Welcome, Candy, Dragonfly, or Dagonfly. You're looking forward to this chat? Okay. Candy says, Jason, did you get my email? I don't know. He is taking the boys to school right now. It is so dark outside. I love natural light, but because I went super early this morning and because of the time change, we have artificial light. So there we are. So on all of my other walkie-talkies and stuff, like I've tried to prepare good, solid notes on how a certain peptide works or how they synergistically work to improve and optimize your cells. So all those other ones are deep dives. We also have coordinating blog posts with them. So the notes that I create are in those blog posts. And you guys, those blog posts have been doing really well on Google. So thank you. And just if you ever have questions, just go to my website, naturalchaos.com, and you will find so much information, such a crazy depth of information. You have no idea. So just always reference that if you are confused. And we did fix the blog search, so it's a lot easier. Like last week, Jason helped fix the blog. It was just a little bit odd how it was set up. So now it should be easier to navigate and find things. Good morning, Lisa and Melissa. Welcome, you guys. Okay. Oh, Estella, good morning. Okay, so this morning is going to be kind of a quicker one, but I think a really good one. And it should generate questions, and then hopefully I can help answer that, or somebody else in our community chat right now that's going on in the live chat can help answer, because it's a group think. And with all of this stuff, it's really hard because there's so much information, but not necessarily strict protocols, because none of it has been like mandated or controlled by the government, which is awesome because we don't want their hands in our lives. They need to get out of our lives. They don't know what they're doing. I don't need them telling me what to do with my life. Okay, so today's one, instead of doing a deep dive into a specific peptide, this is an overall concept of different things that kind of happen when you start peptides, kind of mistakes to avoid, or just concepts to keep in mind. And I just want to do a sound check. Does everything sound okay, you guys? I hope so. I always feel like my earbuds like want to fall out, and then I feel like when I touch them, it could be super annoying. But hopefully everything looks good. And I did this early today because I want to go to my friend Shanna's yoga class because she's teaching finally at my studio. And she does great flows, and she's on Instagram, you guys. And if you ever want to see her flows, maybe what I'll do is later on at Instagram, I'll tag her so that you guys can see her flows. But she's beautiful. She does great flows, has good music, all the kind of things that I enjoy in a yoga class. Okay, looks and sounds great. Perfect. Let's do this. Good morning, Brenda. Okay, I got you guys off. Okay, so these are the 8 mistakes to avoid when starting peptides. So number 1, the idea is buy from a reputable online research peptide site. So that's a little confusing. Like, how do you vet a reputable peptide research site? If you've ever gone online and searched for peptides or a peptide research site, there's hundreds, okay, hundreds. And you're probably just like, well, how do you know which one is good? How do you vet them? It's really a difficult thing. It's the same thing that we found when we started using a lot of product from Korea. It's like, how do you know that tox is legit? How do you know that filler is not bone cement? How do you know all these things? Because anybody can create a certificate and send it to you, okay? Let me just tell you, as a person who can design and create graphics, I can make anything I want. I could make myself a Harvard diploma, and maybe then, these sites would leave me alone. But that's not real. I don't need to do that. But my point is obviously people can authenticate themselves in a myriad of ways. And that's really hard as the end user to have any idea on, are these things legit or not? So number one, peptides are safe. You can overdose yourself. You're not going to die from it. You might get sick. Some peptides, especially like the GLP-1s, if you overdose, you're going to feel sick on them. Some peptides can make you feel really tired. What? Oh my gosh. Jason's trying to get me to fall off the treadmill by distracting me. So one of the ways that we've done it as a community, and if you're wondering about, am I going to tell you where to source peptides on this walkie-talkie? No, because I want to stay on YouTube and I don't want to get kicked off. So I do not tell you where you can buy them. I only share where you can buy peptides inside our app, which is linked below. Skin and Wellness app. It's on Apple and Android. You can join our community and figure out more in-depth info on where you could buy and how you can dose yourself. But if you're just, and the reason for that and the way that we vetted that is because it's a large community who's been buying from these sites, using them, and having good results, okay? So a lot of the sites we buy from either say they're made in the US, but some sites are not made in the US because they don't say it. So if they're not touting it, they're not. And that's okay too. They all have been third-party verified for potency and, authenticity of whatever the peptide is supposed to be. Okay, I'm getting warm. Again, though, those certificates could be completely bogus. Like they include the certificates with the peptides on the site, but again, I could have made that. So I don't hold a lot of stock in somebody showing me a certificate. Like I honestly don't care. I care more about, did someone use that from that place? Did they have a good experience? And did they get the results that they were after? Some people will claim that peptides that you buy from a research center are fake or not effective. It's just not true. It's just, again, it's the fear mongering. It's not true. Okay. They are, yes, you could probably find some random site that's just selling you sugar water, I guess, but it's not in their best interest. They're not going to last. They're going to make a few sales, and then nobody's going to buy from them again. Peptides are like anything else. They want returning clientele. They don't want just a one and done. You want these people to return. And a lot of the peptide sites we buy from, it's evident that they try to keep customers engaged and loyal because they are always sending out deals. So we shop a lot of peptide sites because it just depends on who's having like a BOGO sale on peptides or who's having like the discount, so anyways, they are legit. Yes. Could you find one that's not legit? Of course. Is it going to make sense for that company to put in all that effort to build a site just to sell you sugar water? No, but people do stupid things. But in the end, I bought from a ton of peptide sites. Our community has bought from a ton of peptide sites, which in the app, we have a laundry list of all the ones, and they're all legit, you guys, and they're all effective and good deals. So, okay. So number one, just figuring out where you're going to buy from and just feeling comfortable with it, right? Because you're injecting. You want to feel confident and comfortable with what you're doing. Okay. So that's number one, figuring out where you're going to buy from. Number two, bacteriostatic water. I should have brought down a peptide to use as my little model. So when you buy a vial of peptide, It does not have liquid in it. Just like buying a lot of toxins, minus endotox, but most toxins you have to reconstitute, or exosomes you typically have to reconstitute. So you want to reconstitute your peptides with bacteriostatic water. You're not going to use just regular water or even sterile water. No, you're using bacteriostatic water, which you can source on Amazon, because it has a preservative in it. And water alone will grow bacteria. Okay, that's the reason skincare that's water-based has preservatives in it. If it didn't, the minute you crack that bottle open and start using it, that bottle is going to start growing something on your bathroom shelf, and that's disgusting. So they have to have some type of preservative in them. Bacteriostatic water has a preservative in it, and that prevents bacteria from growing in your little vial of peptides. And sometimes a vial, when you reconstitute it, especially something like a GLP-1, like a tirzepatide or a semaglutide, you're only dosing that once a week. So that peptide in your fridge, you might use it for months, okay? So you really want, it has to be bacteriostatic water. There's no option there, okay? So you're gonna buy the bacteriostatic water. That is exactly what you're gonna use to reconstitute, so that you don't get gross stuff growing in your vial, and then all of a sudden you're injecting yourself with, I mean, that's a laundry list of problems. So please, bacteriostatic water is number 2. That is what you reconstitute with. Okay, number 3. I really should have brought down these. What was I thinking? Where are my props? Okay, number 3 is insulin syringes. So when you go on Amazon to buy insulin syringes, there's a lot of different measurements. There's like, you can do a 1/2 ml, or you can do a 3 ml syringe, so the amount of volume that would fit into an insulin syringe. You want to buy 1 ml insulin syringes for peptides, okay? This works really well for talks also. Like I did talks on Monday in the app, and I showed using the insulin syringe versus using my Luralox syringes. Anyways, it's just a great consistent method for measurement and reconstitution, because when you get into peptides, you're going to be looking at your dose, and this can get super confusing because a lot of times what your dose is going to be per day or per week is going to be in mcgs, like little micrograms, but you have to then convert that to mgs, and then how much that stacks up as units in a syringe. So I know that just sounded really confusing. It's not as confusing as I just made it sound, but the first step, so number 3, the first step is you are buying a 1 ml insulin syringe, and that is going to have 100 units on it. So when you're drawing up, you're focused on the units, and that is how you dose. And having the 100 ml or that 1 ml syringe or 100 units, that is going to keep you super consistent across all of your peptide use and across reconstituting them. Okay, so number 3 is number 1 was where to buy. Number 2, make sure you use bacteriostatic water. Number 3, you're going to use a 1 ml insulin syringe. Both the insulin syringes and the bacteriostatic water can easily be sourced on Amazon. Oh, thanks, Shelby. She says, you are looking amazing, Kim. Sorry I'm late. Girl, we're just glad you're here. Don't worry. Okay, I'm to number 4 now. Number 4 of things to be aware of or mistakes to avoid when starting peptides. So number 4 is reconstitution. Okay, so here's the thing. You don't want to be sloppy with your reconstitution. You want to be mindful of what you're doing. But with that said, it's not the end of the world if your bacteriostatic water just fires into your vial. Originally, and you'll still see this everywhere because That's just how people are. People will be like, oh my gosh, if your bacteriostatic water, because your vial has a lot of vacuum in it. Okay, so when you go to put in your bacteriostatic water, it's going to want to bring it down like a fire hose into your powder of peptides. Okay, and the biggest concern that people love to freak out about or say is, you destroyed your peptides, they're so fragile. And if your bacteriostatic water doesn't go in slow and along the side of the vial, then they're destroyed. You've ruined the potency. It's not true. The potency isn't ruined. You didn't defrag your peptides. I was listening to a podcast and a YouTube video on this, and it was with two different people who make peptides. And they said that they tested this. They tested doing the slow application model, and then they also tested just letting the syringe fire in fast and not trying to control it. The only difference is when you let it fire in fast, you get a foam buildup because you created, you aspirated the product. So instead of being able to draw up and inject immediately once it's completely dissolved, you have to just let your vial sit there as those bubbles and everything become, homogeneous together. Okay, so really, you just, by not taking it slow into the vial, you're going to wait on the other end for the foam and everything to basically be one solvent. And in the end, it's better to just do it the safer, more clinician way, which is when you bring in your bacteriostatic water into your vial, you're just going to angle the needle the best you can towards the side of your vial so that the water is kind of drained down on the side. And then you're also holding onto the plunger because that suction is going to drag it down super fast. So you're just holding onto the plunger, preventing it from firing in super fast. But again, if it fires in fast, you're just going and it foams up. You're just going to wait a little bit for that foam to just go down, and then you can do your draw and it will be fine. There's no science behind right now that if you fire in your bacteriostatic water, you're defragging your peptide. All right. But again, we want to try to do everything as good as we can. But sometimes you might load it up, you might get excited, you might pop that needle in and forget to hold on to that plunger, and it might fire in super fast. I know that's happened to me before. I'm getting it all ready. I forget that suction is so intense, and I don't have my thumb right there holding the plunger, and it starts firing in, and then I'm like grabbing onto it, trying to control it. In the end, it's not been a problem, okay? The other thing with reconstituting this, and this is about maintaining the potency of them long-term. So when you first get your peptides, let's say you buy let's say you buy 4 bottles for 4 vials of tirzepatide. You don't need to reconstitute, obviously, them until you're ready to use them, but you also want to keep those peptides as protected as possible. So sunlight will destroy your peptides. I actually freaked out on Jason the other day because I came downstairs and we had just gotten a new order of peptides, and he just had the vials all laying out on the table for I don't know how long, and sunlight was near them. Okay, the reason peptides ship to you, I mean, they would do this probably anyways, but they ship to you in dark, closed, opaque packages is because the peptides are sensitive. They will break down to UV light. They will break down to indoor LED light even. So when you have a lot of peptides that you want to care for a long time, first, the ones you're not going to use, just stick them in a dark package, like the one they came in even. Just keep them in some kind of dark envelope that keeps them away from light, and put them in your freezer, okay? So if you're not ready to reconstitute, just put them in the freezer. They're fine in there. Once you reconstitute, you're going to keep them in your fridge. And I like having a fridge that is not our food fridge for them. So upstairs in my bathroom, and that's where I do my injections anyway, so that's where I keep them. So I keep them in my food fridge, or my upstairs beauty fridge, because I don't have kids opening up the door all day. The light inside of your refrigerator can also weaken them. So if you are keeping them in a family fridge, again, put them in some kind of dark envelope, some kind of, protective element, so that when your family is opening up the fridge all the time, they're not getting impacted by the light that goes on in your fridge. Or if you have a beauty fridge, just keep it all there together, because it's not getting opened up as often. I might have to slow myself down. In case you wonder, I do walk at a 4 incline, and I try to do 2.8 or 3. I was at a 3 speed. We're going to back her down a little bit so that I can talk. Okay. So after reconstitution, the 10 most common peptides maintain 95% potency if kept in a fridge for 7 days, up to 2 weeks. Although some peptides will be used for months and potency does decrease, the effect is truly, the impact is truly not as effective, or it's still effective. It's just, it might diminish a little bit, but they're still effective. And again, direct sunlight will break down reconstituted peptides within a few hours. So in 6 to 8 weeks, the potency is very reduced and might no longer be effective. I'll tell you this, I tested this myself. So I had a little vial of semaglutide left over from when I stopped using it in December. There's just a little bit, and I had reconstituted that guy back in September or something. So he was an old reconstituted little vial of peptides. And I was thinking, I really want to microdose semaglutide. Now I'm thinking I'm just going to microdose tirzepatide, so I'm going to buy some tirzepatide. But I was like, I really want to do the microdosing of semaglutide. I'll just see how potent the semaglutide that I have left is. And I knew it had diminished, right, because it'd been a while. So I drew, I think I did 20 units, and this is the higher concentration. So I was thinking, well, I'll do 20 units, because if it was concentrated, I would try to do 10. Anyways, no effect. It was totally dead. It didn't hurt me or anything, but it just had no effect, because the potency of that semaglutide peptide, it had been so long since it had been reconstituted, and it didn't have any power in it. So yeah, they do diminish, which is why if you're doing a protocol and you reconstitute, you want to stay on your protocol and use them up, because if you go back to them a few months later and be like, oh, I might try that again, it's not going to have the same effect as if when you just reconstituted and you're doing it appropriately. Okay. Injection site. So now we're to number 5, injection site. So most people talk about injecting SubQ, or you can do intramuscularly. I kind of vacillate between the two, just depending on how I'm feeling, or if I have any bruises, or if I'm going out and I don't want to have a bruise on my shoulder. But for me, last night I did all of them SubQ. This morning, before I go to yoga, I'll probably do one in my shoulder. This is the thing. Peptides have a really short lifespan, okay? Their half-lives are short. With synthesizing them, we've been able to get their lifespan a little bit longer, but it's still short. So when you think about it, SubQ, great. Most people feel comfortable doing SubQ because it doesn't hurt. You just shove it into a fat pocket, you go on your way. But the uptake is going to be a little bit slower SubQ, because you're not as vascular in your fat as you are if you shot it straight into the muscle, which is intramuscularly. So for me, I do like to dose intramuscularly, because the uptake is faster. I feel like I'm getting more of the potency. I'm getting those peptides to work faster. They're getting into my blood system, my circulatory system, much faster than SubQ. That doesn't mean SubQ doesn't work. It does. I'm just sharing with you my theory behind it, because in the end, when you're injecting, you're trying to get them into your bloodstream. That's the point. And if you shove it into the fat, it will get into your bloodstream. But if you shove it into a muscle, it's going to get into that bloodstream faster. Also with peptides, if you are treating an injury specific, so like my groin, for instance, I shoot my peptides straight into the injured site. If you have a shoulder injury, like you tore your rotator cuff and you have scar tissue there, and you're trying to get the tendon and everything to repair and grow more tissue matrix, you want to shoot that peptide straight into your injury site. It will go to work so much faster there, aiding in inflammation reduction and tissue growth. So everybody will talk about just inject SubQ, but you have to also think about yourself. Why are you using these peptides? Is it for energy? Is it for an injury specific? If it is, you're going to shoot them straight into your injured site. If it's just for overall wellness, you can just shoot it in SubQ. If you care about getting the most bang for your buck, then you might just want to do it intramuscularly. So it's just it's a thought process behind it. It's not, oh, I can only inject SubQ because that's what everybody says is to inject SubQ. They only say inject SubQ because most people feel comfortable injecting SubQ. All right. Number 6. Oh, with that, that's a great question, Studio Scale. Actually, I would say, so she says, would that also include something like the tirzepatide or the GLP-1s? I would actually say with those specifically, SubQ is completely fine. And the reason is because they have such long half-lives, because they last 7+ days, and they actually have an cumulative effect, which after you've done 4 weeks, your body is like actually super optimized on those peptides because of their long lifespan. So actually, I'm really glad you said that. I think with the GLP-1s, SubQ is probably the best place because those aren't made to specifically heal an injury like BPC 157 or CJC 1295 or TB 500. So when we're talking about the weight loss ones, and because of how long their lifespan is, I think injecting into your butt, or I know a lot of people do their stomach. When I was using the semaglutide, I injected in my butt because I didn't really have any front fat to do it in. And my abdomen feels weird anyways from the surgery. So I don't, I don't want to shove anything in there, but definitely those I all did SubQ. And I love that you brought that up because that is it's an excellent point. And again, that's speaking to the point of what peptide are you using? How long is its half-life? And what is the point of why you're using it? When we talk about the GLP-1s, those are for overall weight management, and their lifespan is really long. So it makes sense to just do them SubQ. You could obviously do it intramuscularly, but because they have such their uptake can be nauseating. So it's probably smarter with the GLP-1s in particular to do SubQ so that it doesn't hit you so fast and you feel super nauseated. Because if you do it intramuscularly, again, it's going to get into your circulatory system faster. You're probably going to feel more nauseous. So specifically with those ones, SubQ is probably the best way to do it. And if I use tirzepatide to microdose, I will do it SubQ. Okay. Number 6. This is mgs and mcgs. These are super confusing. They've been super confusing for me. I finally feel like I have a handle on it, but it is very confusing. One of the reasons it's so confusing is because it feels like some sites will talk in mcgs, other sites will talk in mgs, some sites will talk in units, and you're like, holy crap, how does any of this relate? I'm so confused. And so number 1, you stop the confusion by using the 1 ml syringe. Okay, so like we talked about earlier, using a 1 ml syringe is the easiest way to keep a standard for units, as different peptides come in different mg vials. So sometimes you'll buy a peptide that's 5 milligrams. Sometimes you'll buy a peptide that's 10 milligrams. That's the amount of peptide that's in that vial. But then dosage for yourself usually comes in mcgs. So it might be 2,000 mcgs. You're like, well, how does that relate to mgs? And then how does that then in turn relate to units? So the three factors that are going on are quite confusing, especially when you're starting out. And one of the things that I use, let's see, I use a peptide calculator. Okay, so you can just look them up for free online. So many peptide calculators, which basically just help you navigate the unit conversion. I have a paid app. I think it was like $4 or something. I like it because I just store all of my peptides because it lets me like favorite them. So I'll store my peptides that I'm using in it, and it's just like a quick cheat sheet for me on what I'm dosing and the reconstitution. Oh, Manuel's from Ecuador. Welcome. Mucho gusto, Manuel. Okay. So using a peptide calculator is going to definitely help you navigate this. So, so the calculator first asks which size syringe are you using? And you're going to say, I'm using a 1 ml syringe, right? Then it asks, how much bacteriostatic water are you adding? So on a couple sites, the standard is like for vials that have 1 milligram to 4 milligrams, you're going to add 1 ml of bacteriostatic water. And then vials that have 5 milligrams to 9 milligrams, you're going to add 2 milliliters of bacteriostatic water. And then vials that are 10 milligrams and up, you're going to add 3 milliliters of bacteriostatic water. But let me break this down better. I find that to be kind of a backwards approach to it, because that idea means that you will kind of already know your units. I think the better approach is, what is the dose you need? So like if you look at a book or you look on a peptide cheat sheet and it says, okay, your dose for this peptide is 2,000 mcgs. So that's like the really small unit. I like to go into the peptide calculator and just put in my 1 ml syringe, and I put in, I'm reconstituting just with 1 milliliter of bacteriostatic water. And I go down and I say, I want my dose to be 2,000 mcgs. What that's going to do is it's going to correspond to the units that you would need based off of the 1 ml syringe and the 1 ml bacteriostatic water. The reason that sometimes people will add 3 milliliters of bacteriostatic water is just so that when they draw up, it's more of a draw. So for instance, if you have a 10 milligram, you have a 10 mg vial of BCP 157, for instance, and you only add in 1 milliliter of bacteriostatic water, the potency is going to be really, really high, which means that to get, if you're doing 2,000 mcgs as your dose, you might only be drawing up like 1 unit on a 1 ml syringe. That's a tough thing to see. It's a tough thing to draw up. It's a tough thing to dose yourself because it's such a small amount because the potency is so high. So what a lot of people do is on a bigger vial like that, they'll do 3 milliliters of bacteriostatic water. And then what that does is they still have the same desire to get 2,000 mcgs as their dose. But now all of a sudden, instead of only having to draw up like 1 unit. Now it's increased it to like 3 units. And I'm just using this as like a basic example, but it allows you to be able to draw it more because the potency has been dispersed more by the bacteriostatic water. You can always reconstitute these with 1 ml of bacteriostatic water, and it just means that the potency is going to be really high, which means that you're going to have fewer units in your 1 ml syringe. And again, sometimes that's just hard to see. So that's the reason people will add more bacteriostatic water, just so that they can see the units better. I like to do it so that an application for me is roughly around 10 units of something. If something's going to be below 10 units on a 1 ml syringe, I try to up it so that it is around a 10 unit application, just because it's easier for me to draw it up. It's easier for me to see. I prefer that than being like 2 units. That's like so small. I just don't like dealing with it like that. Okay. I know that was a little confusing. I think for the blog post, I need to create graphics to explain this. In the app, I did actually do a graphic last week, specifically with tirzepatide, where I showed the difference between if you just reconstituted I think it was a 10 milligram or 10 mg vial with 1 milligram of milliliter of bacteriostatic water versus 2 milliliters of bacteriostatic water. And just I showed you on the calculator how that varied and how the units changed. Same potency, same mcg amount, just the units varied based on how much bacteriostatic water you added. And so with that in mind, in this blog, we'll get those graphics added so that it kind of makes more sense. Okay, number 7, nutrition. So peptides are meant to optimize your cellular pathways. Taking your protein intake seriously is what really helps peptides work. Peptides are incredible, but using them is like leveling up your life, right? So you need to take your nutrition for results very critical. So for instance, peptides get blunted by carbs and sugar. So if you take your peptides at night, like say you do ipamorelin, which helps you sleep and recover. Let's say you're doing that at like 9 o'clock at night every night before bed. Sorry, I always forget to take these earrings out. If you eat like rice and chicken and stuff at 8 o'clock at night, and then you want to dose your peptides at 9, you don't have enough window there. I mean, you're just not getting the effect of the peptides that you hope for, because that rice is still in your system. It's been turned into glucose. You have insulin spiking. That's going to blunt the receptors on your cells for your peptides. So the goal is really to have a good 3-hour spacing from when you last ate to when you inject. And honestly, a better scenario too is to not have any carbs after like lunch. So right now, with me trying to like gain a little bit more muscle, I do have carbs in my diet, but I have them specifically at lunchtime. And then dinner is just protein. It's just steak, hamburger, something like that. So not only am I not having any carb load later in the day before I do my peptides injection, but I'm also thinking, okay, if I have steak at 6 o'clock at night, that's going to be completely processed before 9 o'clock when I inject. There's going to be days that you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm just sharing with you, if you want the ideal situation for your peptides to actually work and do the processes that you hope they're going to do, you don't want to blunt them with food. So especially carbs. And I was bad last night because I was super hungry after editing. So I'll just be honest. I didn't think I was going to eat anything else last night. But then all of a sudden I was hungry and I had already done my injections. And I was like, just stay in bed. But I got back up and had more chicken because I was hungry. So I know that I compromised the effect of them last night, but it is what it is. Like, I don't want to always be hungry either. Okay. Candy says its dose seems so confusing until you do it hands-on and learn it. I still question it. This right, double check, and usually am. So it's not as bad as it sounds. You're breaking it down. Nice. Okay. Thanks, Candy. Yeah. Honestly, peptides, like everything in my life, like Candy said, it's hands-on experience. It's I remember when I did that blend, and I totally, like, the potency on it was crazy, and I was just like wasting peptides because I was like injecting so much. But it gets confusing because a lot of people put out cheat sheets, and so you like follow them, and then you're like, wait, this doesn't make sense. Because once you get doing it, you're like, this doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense. So, anyways, it is definitely learn, experience, and you'll be fine. And luckily, it's not like it's going to hurt you. It's just you might waste some money in your development of understanding how to put them back together and how to dose them. What peptide regimen do you do? So I've been doing a bunch of different peptides throughout this year and different cycles and protocols. And I definitely shared in depth in the app about that. And then all the other walkie-talkies that I've done previously, I've covered the peptides I've been using and how they work. I don't share, I think I've shared my dose. It's specifically, I don't show you injection here and I don't tell you where to buy them here. That's all saved for the app. Okay. Okay, number 8, expectations. Setting correct expectations is important when using peptides. So you're going to build your plan correctly for what you want to optimize your system to take advantage when you're using peptides. They're not cheap, so you want to use them the best you can. Peptides optimize the synergy between your hormones. Getting your hormones optimized will help you achieve your goals more quickly. If a system is broken, it's broke down, then it drags down the peptide's efficiency. Okay, so this is super important to understand. Peptides are amazing, and it doesn't matter how weak or heavy or sick you might be, peptides will have an impact on you for the better. But if you are like an athlete using peptides, your system's already super optimized. So you're just going to get a much better result from the peptide use. It's going to be a lot more effective because your system is already super efficient and knows how to use them efficiently. Because all they are is molecules that typically attach on the outside of your cell membrane and signal to your cell communication like, oh, we need to be doing this. Oh, there's an injury we need to make, or tissue. We need to send in fibroblasts. They're just really good at the communication factor. But if your system is already super inflamed and drugged down by insulin resistance and just different things that start to aid us as we, or target us as we get older, then you might not see the crazy peptide experience that you might see some athletes say like, oh, I had this injury and I injected peptides for a week and it's completely healed. Their system's already optimized. If you injure yourself and you're not already that healthy, it might take you a couple cycles of peptides to heal yourself. So I think that makes sense to us. Like, that's just the reality of it. Also, peptides aren't addictive and they're not going to hurt you. But the reason people cycle on and off of them is because you do build up a tolerance to them. So similar to alcohol, like ipamorelin, which I love because it puts you to sleep, you do that 5 days on, 2 nights off per week. And so that helps you kind of cycle back onto your regular system and not always need the peptide to go to sleep. But I love the peptide to go to sleep. And then also because they do cost money, that's the other reason that people will cycle on and off of them. just because as you build up a tolerance to them, you're going to need more to get the same effect. So that's the reason you'll see protocols where it's like 12 weeks on, 12 weeks off, just so that you get the impact. It's efficient for the money. Then you cycle off, your body becomes, less tolerant to them. You use them again, you get that same great experience. So that's the reason people cycle on and off. It's not because you're going to get sick or addicted. Mentally, you'll get addicted because you're like, I just want peptides in my life 24/7. But like physically, you're not addicted to peptides. Hey, buddy, you going to go to school? Have a great day. I love you. Okay. So hopefully, yeah, Candy's been doing peptides forever. Is my groin better? That's a great question, Candy. Okay. My groin is so much better, but there's still like this tweak in it. So I've just been trying to, I can lift with it. I notice it actually more in yoga now than I do when I'm lifting. So it's definitely something where it's like a strained stretching thing. And in yoga, obviously we do a lot of stretching in the groin area. So I just feel like it's getting better. The inflammation is definitely reduced, but it's not like perfect yet. I'm not an athlete. I wasn't optimized, so I have to do like a lot of cycles. Okay, here's a little bit more insight before I go, because I'm going to go to my yoga class this morning. So people get concerned about peptides coming out of Asia. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have concerns. Like, everyone should have concerns with whatever they want to have concerns with. But the reason majority of peptides are made in Asia is because they don't have the same environmental rules that we do here in the United States. So it's just cheaper to make peptides in Asia because peptides are made in a solvent. There's a more expensive way to do it, but the cheaper way is to do it in a solvent. And that's how they do it in Asia. So they chain them together in a solvent. Eventually that solvent needs to be disposed of. And in Asia, there's just not apparently regulations for how people are disposing of this solvent. So that makes just making peptides cheaper. It's not that Asia is putting metal into peptides. Like, I see all this fear mongering going on, and I'm just like, okay, yes, anyone can sit there and say that any random thing is put into anything, right? Like, if we're not all on the manufacturing line, how do we even know? But just think about it from a business concept. Because people used to say this all the time about the Korean injectable beauty products that we would use. They'd be like, those are fake. Those are full of glue. They have bone cement in them. It's like, okay. Again, if somebody wants to sell one box to someone filled with glue, that's kind of a crappy business model. Do you think that person's going to return to them for more glue-filled filler? No. Like, it's just, none of these things cost a lot of money to make. It's not like uranium or something where it's like very finite. You can't like remake it easily. Like, these things do not cost a lot of money to make. They're not hard to make. So the idea that everyone in Asia has to fill syringes with glue and bone cement is just a joke. And it's the same with peptides. They don't have to make fake peptides. They're not saving a ton of money doing that. They're not building a loyal business, which is what they want to do. They want you to buy more. So if they're selling you stuff that doesn't work, you're never going to buy from them again. So I know everybody, the people who like to fearmonger are the people who do not understand business. They don't understand it. And they love to like throw out these things that make absolutely no sense. Could somebody do that? Have they done that? Probably yes. But that's not the majority of people who are doing business, because it makes absolutely no sense if you actually want to run a business. You want to run a business where people are loyal and they're hooked on your peptides and they're coming back to buy peptides. You want them buying as many peptides as possible. So the idea that they'd be selling you crappy, inefficient peptides is just not the reality. So here in the United States, there's a lot of peptide sites, a lot of them will say USA made peptides, like they are manufacturing their peptides in the United States. Their peptides are going to be a little bit more expensive because, again, if they're manufacturing in the United States, they're following more strict environmental rules. Okay. There are peptide sites that are here in the United States, but they do not tout that their peptides are made in the United States. And that's because I believe they are buying in bulk from Asia. And because this one that I'm thinking of has a massive catalog of peptides, both oral and injectable. And it's just a massive, massive catalog of options. And I don't care that their peptides aren't made in the United States. They do get a third party vet certificate on it here in the US, so they're checking them all. Again, they could make that up. Who's going in vetting the research center, who's actually verifying that the peptide is what it says it is? And so I've seen online in some of the bro forums where people are like, oh, that place must be fake because they're so much cheaper than the other place that's US made. Why does a lower cost mean it's fake? There's a massive difference between these two places. One is saying they're making their peptides in the United States. The other one is not saying they're making their peptides in the United States. That's the reason there is a price variance. Not that one is fake, but that their go-to-market strategy is completely different based on where they're manufacturing their peptides. So again, I see these things in these bro forums. I see these things online. I see these comments from people. And it's just always like, sure, you can say that, but where's the proof and the evidence that it's like rampant like that? So I don't mind buying peptides that are made overseas. I just like a good deal. Again, all of these places have been utilized a lot by our app. So when somebody else adds to that list and it's like, oh, I just bought from here, it was great. That's like a community think tank of essentially vetting peptide sources. So that's the reason the app community is so successful at that. And that's the reason I feel comfortable buying from a lot of different sites and using these peptides. So peptides help optimize hormones because peptides optimize your cells and aid in the pathway communication. I think that's super critical, especially for women. I know that we're all suffering with hormone imbalances and trying to do hormone replacement. And I just think that adding peptides in can really, really help with aiding and supporting your hormones. Leptin resistance issues are harder to solve than insulin resistance. So combining natural thyroid with peptides assists with leptin resistance. And I do wonder if I have leptin resistance, but I do now have my MP thyroid, which helps. I combined that with my peptides, I think has really been like a really great combination. Here's a point about ipamorelin based on my own experience. So ipamorelin can cause fat loss, but if your thyroid hormone is not optimized, like mine's not optimized, you will not get the full benefits of ipamorelin because the fat burning pathway is broken. So for me personally, I have not noticed a shred from using ipamorelin because my thyroid hormone is not yet optimized. My Hashimoto's disease is evident that my thyroid is broken. Once I solve my thyroid issue, ipamorelin will be optimized in my body for fat burning. This doesn't mean I don't notice other benefits from using ipamorelin. Ipamorelin has been incredible for helping me go to sleep. Improved sleep has aided in my recovery after working out. This allowed me to lift more frequently and live more actively. And by that, increasing my activity and lifting more will help my hormone dysfunction. So these peptides have a lot of awesome ways that they can help you, but sometimes you might only notice one of the myriad of options just based on your own system and what your system can do with that peptide at that time. Okay, are there any questions? Candy says the molecule is apparently too small for backwater to work. Oh, what are you guys talking about? Oh, Candy's saying, are you familiar? I don't know what you guys are saying. Okay, you guys, I want to get ready to go to my yoga class that starts in 45 minutes. I hope this was like super helpful. Again, if you're interested in utilizing peptides the way our community has been, check out our app. If you just want more information on my notes, the different peptides I've used, you can definitely go to the blog, and it's all linked below. And I'll see you guys on the next Walkie-Talkie. And Thursday, tomorrow, I'll be releasing the scalp spa video. Oh, you guys, I was supposed to announce the winner. Melissa, do we have the winner? I don't even know. Again, namaste. Okay, you guys, I'm so sorry. I do not know the winner. I don't know if it was mentioned yet, but we will announce it. I know that I said I was going to announce it this morning, and I totally spaced it. I do not know if we have a winner from the giveaway. Yeah, from Mondays. Remember how we did like a little, anyways, we'll take care of that in the app. We will post the winner, and I'll even do a post here of who the winner was on YouTube. Anyways, sorry, you guys. Okay. Melissa says she's going to announce it in the app. Okay, you guys, thank you so much. No, I can't turn it up to max. All right, you guys, see you later. Bye.